All right, let's go to worse. Commander of 117th Brigade, Cherkassk Territorial Defense, Anatoly Stuzhenko, gave in his interview the following statement that everybody is giving advice how to answer when your car is stopped on the block post. We'll play till our military will be kicked everywhere. It should be different. If you're being told to leave the vehicle, you need to get out, especially by the military block post. Otherwise, we should be able to shoot through one's knees for not obeying. Alexei, do you think knees shot through will help a person to get mobilized? If that's the block post to check for mobilization and all that? Alexei, another question to that is, another congressman said they don't know where 3.5 million men are, and perhaps we should now be allowing them to kick the doors in. If to escalate that into the land of absurd, it actually is a progress, Nikolay. Initially, when I was at the office, they did not know where 4.5 millions were. Now he said 3.5, so they found apparently the million somewhere. Another joke in that bucket, Syrskyi refused from position of commander-in-chief, and the best comment under that was, what if we shoot through his knees? Perhaps he will agree. And I will not be talking the mantras that and how we are different from Russia. We already talked about it in this stream, so yeah, there's really nothing to say here. Okay, it's time to remind everybody who is watching us that we're still supporting military and their fundraisers. Today, 93rd Special Motorized Brigade is collecting funds for a vehicle, 370,000 hryvnias. It's their personal request, so we're just emphasizing their ask with our means. Please support our troops with whatever you can. Yeah, let me say here, Nikolay, that whatever is happening, whatever dark perspectives we may be giving here, despite all the criticism to the shadow qualities of our national character, even if we are criticizing military, we still need to continue supporting them, because only they stand between the reality where we are and where we are not. So, despite of all the politics and everything, we are all interested to make sure we help them. And let's close this fundraiser for 93rd. And the first is for the vehicle, the second will be for the UAVs. Don't be surprised if you'll see 93rd after we close the first fundraiser. The second is also theirs. They're at a very critical part of the front, defending our capabilities, future capabilities, and actually the future itself. Important thing you said. Despite people may not support us, there was a story right earlier when you posted material that as a result of our support and our viewers who did the fundraiser and supported for the first tank brigade. Oh yeah, first special tank brigade. And Commander reacted, I don't know if he criticized this way, but he was saying some weird things about you. And you published that despite his personal position, despite his personal statements, we're still helping first tank brigade anyway. And I got a message from a soldier from that brigade who was, first of all, thanking us for the fundraiser, but who was also upset somehow that this story was used in our stream. I don't know why did he not criticize Commander and attack you instead. Oh, that's a simple one. Let me show you how that transpired. So the guy replied to us, said that you used our fundraiser for your PR opportunity. So what he is thinking about, he is taking a high moral ground, and you guys are horrible. This is the beginning of any false thought thread when you put yourself on the pedestal. I think what happened there is that he was one of those who initiated the fundraiser, and he probably was called by the commander, and the commander told him, well, what the heck, why are you even doing that, why are you interacting with these people, stop it. So he basically did that retraction thing when they still got the money, but he posted a rebuttal online saying that you guys shouldn't. So as a result, guys, if you don't want our money, if you don't want our help, go try to do the fundraiser somewhere else. But once again, if you fail to gather it in some other places, and you'll still need help. Come back to that damned Arestovych and Feldman, and we will be helping you to get the funds for the front. For the simple reason, you may think anything you want about us. Our task is to make sure you can fight effectively, and that you defend us effectively. We are adult enough to separate these two things: your name calling and the effectiveness of your unit on the front. Right, like in that proverb, I forgive you the mules, but only the mules. But as for commander of the brigade, I would say, when you're being called during the interview by whatever media you're talking to, could you say a couple bad words about Arestovych? Please, and you do that, then all of a sudden you may find that those Mavics do not come to your unit in good quantities. Not because we stop fundraisers, not because of that, but because your soldiers might stop doing it. And we are one of maybe a dozen channels in Ukraine that's still capable to do quick fundraisers for the front. So when you start being choosy and you start supporting those political requests, you may have issues. And you may actually ask a question of yourself, why people are not giving them through other channels, and why people like Arestovych and Feldman still have such a big platform. Right? You should not be lowering the subjectivity of that, because it is me and Nikolay who are asking our viewers to support your troops. And very likely, you guys will face more difficulties when you try to do it elsewhere. That's why, despite all these things, we're keeping the doors open. You can argue as much as you like, you can say whatever you like, but if you need funds, come back. We'll make sure we can help you. And the other brigades as well. All right. In any case, our line actually is very impressive. And guys from all parts of the front are requesting aid. And we're not making a problem out of it. Whenever we can, we help. I think just the story itself is very comical. Somehow, in a strange manner, when you do these fundraisers and you help the troops on the front, all of a sudden you see that video where it's just no facts, just pure hate. And I was looking at the words of the commander of the 1st Tank Brigade. There are a lot of judgments, but not a single fact, right? And it bubbles up, right? It will reach us anyway. Just like you got this video from our viewers asking a question, why are you helping these guys while they hate you so much? Yeah, the question was like this: Alexei, there are more adequate people who are not saying anything about you, and the line is of more than 50 different requests. Why not to them, but to these guys? I use this case on purpose to show how we should be doing, how we should be working to support the common good. Because when I am attacked absolutely unprovokedly, it is not a reason for me to stop support. For me, it's a reason to continue support, because despite however they treat me personally, I do not turn my personal attitudes on here. I think about the common good, and I do care that our soldiers have enough equipment, and that the brigade would be effective enough on the front, and all together we get a common good of more successful defense of our territory. So I showed us example that common good is more important than your personal feelings. But these people of grand wits said that this is a self-PR. They found the new word, right? Politicians taught them a couple new words. Politicians taught them the word PR, and war taught them a new word, PSYOP. And some of them appear to think that when they mix both words in one post and say this is all PSYOP and PR, they've said everything they could, and they closed the topic. Big drop. And there is nothing else to talk about it. Frankly, there is not much else to talk after such a commentary. It's like two young poets. One is calling the other, how you doing? Well, I finished a poem about love. All right, and oh yeah, that's it. Just close the topic. Not writing anymore. So when they make such posts, what our Ukrainians very often believe in that. If PR and PSYOP did not work, they take the golden measure, the last so-called nuclear weapon in this case. which is more effective, that he thinks, than hydrogen or nuclear bomb. And it sounds like this: Arestovych is a Russian spy or is conducting Russian narrative. And after that, the person, after posting this, he feels fulfilled. He goes to do his sports, he goes to work, he goes to take care of his kids, imagining that conversation ended right there, that everybody acknowledged his righteousness, and Arestovych suicided himself off. But Arestovych still continues to work somehow, goddammit, and he continues to do fundraisers for that same brigade where he was accused to be a Moscow spy. Even that nuclear statement did not work, and the person is completely lost. And that's when they close the eyes and try to find some move in this situation. And maybe with the last impulse of push from within, in his crushing conscience, he's saying, this is all PR. This is still all PR and PSYOP. And the circle begins again. So besides all these funny posts, guys, friends, when you need help, when you need aid to do the fundraiser and get your equipment, come back again. We'll help you again. However many times you say that I'm a Moscow spy and it's just a PR and PSYOP. Well, here, in the same fashion as you spoke about Bigus, you did not use the same words about this commander, right? Which I want to highlight. Well, of course, Bigus is taking his position consciously. He knows what he is doing. Commander of the 1st Tank Brigade, he is more of a manipulatable person. His superiors can definitely tell him to say a few things about Arestovych. And, after that, you're a hero. And Bigus is a different story. He's a journalist, he knows what he's doing. It's a different angle. He's not to be pushed by his superiors. He has no superiors. It's his own business. So there's a significant difference. That's why I can say these words about the commander of the 1st Brigade in the way I do, but I'm not going to be as nice to Bigus himself. Well, Bigus also partook in some war action, and I think his team exists in the same fashion that Alpha Media was built, right? There are sponsors and all. Nikolay, I'm not sentimental. I'm coming from the military, right? For me, the phrase, oh, he fought on the war, some of our civilians may faint, haven't heard that, and give him the podium. I won't. I partook in the wars as well, and I know a lot more people who are still fighting. And some of them, I would say, have not gained anything. War seldom make people better, and many of them turned out to be quite assholes. So, if anything, when I hear the phrase that somebody fought in the war, it doesn't really cause an awe in my psyche. When I look at that person, I start looking at this person with more detailed approach, and I'm trying to understand how he ticks. By default, my default setting is to consider the soldier and the officer as an important figure of our society who sacrifices his or her life and time for us. But when you look at a person, at a certain person in a certain situation, that's where you can be more attentive. And, we can separate. We can say that it's great that you fought in the war, but for your current activities, you're an asshole. No threats. I actually will bring you an example of proper positioning, and I don't know how true it is, but it is a myth from the Soviet times. In 1943, the Battle of Kursk, the Germans broke the line, and commander of division, Colonel Ivanov, let's say, took the battle flag and rose his soldiers into counteroffensive maneuver, and they held the position. Next day, Stalin issues an order. Colonel Ivanov, for leaving his command post, to demote down to infantryman and send him to trenches. But infantryman Ivanov is to be awarded with an order of battle red flag for successful operation countering the enemy's breaking through. So, that's what exactly we're doing. All right, next one. CIA Director Burns issued an article on foreign affairs, transformation of CIA in the epoch of competition. And he made several conclusions inside this publication, specifically saying that at least 315,000 of Russian soldiers were killed or wounded. 2/3 of pre-war tank stockpiles of Russia are already destroyed. The trumpeted 10-year military modernization program by Putin was pretty much decimated. And he made several conclusions about the future and about Putin's leadership in Russia and about this coming year, how difficult it will be for Ukraine. He is writing that repressive grasp of Putin will likely not fail recently, and it will be holding his goal and trying to continue attacking Ukraine, while his power in Russia is eroding very slowly. And this framework actually is way beyond the country fighting for its freedom and independence. It has much larger consequences. Russia is getting military advantages, he's saying, because of support of China, North Korea, and Iran. He's making several not so comfortable conclusions for us in Ukraine, but generally they match what you were talking about, and it's about the defense industry and the other aspects. And he finishes everything with a very strange thesis, which I fail to understand. He is saying, for United States to leave this conflict in this decisive moment and to stop support of Ukraine would be the goal of historic proportions. So how I understand the goal of this publication is, he's saying that preserving supplies of arms to Ukraine will help Ukraine to hold until the possibility of serious negotiations. It allows Ukraine to keep some semblance of winning and providing for strategic defeat for Russia when Ukraine can recover and Russia will continue to pay for stupidity of Putin. And here he puts this phrase, for United States to leave this conflict and to stop support of Ukraine would be the goal of historic proportions. Maybe it's a low-quality translation. Yeah, it is a low-quality translation, Nikolay. You need to look at the English language original, but just following the spirit of this article, he's basically saying that it's a good goal to stop this war in a fashion that Putin would be weakened. That would be ideal. And I have not seen the full original, but I want to add a couple articles that I think he's missing. How much did Ukraine pay for weakening Putin by 50% or double? And what did Americans do to properly support and respect the casualties and the sacrifices suffered by Ukraine in this war? And what does he see as our main task, and how is he seeing Americans' position to support us in this task? And until he adds these to the article, this article is not full, because my conclusion is the same. We suffered colossal casualties, and the West, as they like to say, for 10% of American budget, without losing an American soldier, they weakened Russia twice. And we have suffered all the casualties, all the brunt of this war, and we didn't even get to the political table where decisions are made. So what are we fighting for? And again, we are in the phase when America, trying to resolve a local political matter that costs just a couple dozen $billion when military budget is $900 billion this year, we are hanging on a thread waiting for their debates to be over, and our infantry is paying with blood for that. So when they will start making these notions in the article, I would say it's a good article. Otherwise, I'll put it delicately, it's a little bit one-sided. Financial Times is writing that lack of qualified cadre will definitely cause difficulties on the front in Ukraine, and they're talking about qualified cadre in European industrial complex. Very often they bring a story from Sweden, saying that Stefan Löfven, who was elected to the highest political post in Sweden in 2014, and some commentators find it a bit funny that the leader of Social Democrats started his career as a welder, highlighting that people of certain professions that are really crucial for military industrial complex are the ones who've been laughed at before. These professions were denigrated and were not prestigious for a while. And the number of people working these occupations has dwindled. They just don't have enough supply of experts and specialists and technicians, and it's not quite clear where to get them. As you said before, it'll take years for some of these defense companies to ramp up their production, and now some of the leading European publications are writing exactly about that. Well, I'm a bit used to the fact that whatever we are saying here is being picked in 3 months by the leading publications and Ukrainian commentators avoiding our last names as much as they can and pretending that they're the first ones to bring it up. I only have one request. If you're going to bring it up and you're following us anyway, why then all the repressions, right? Why trying to hack our phones and some other things, right? You might just come and say, hey, we reference these guys, or at least, it's your idea, but stop attacking. What the heck? I would say it's joking aside, we are in a situation ideal for the Second or Third World War now. Both sides have enough cumulative factors of pluses and minuses. The West has financial and technological advantage and some resource advantage, at least initially. And the weakness is that military complex is rather small and it's difficult to restart it. And the model of their political setup is wrong for the war of that scale. And they lack a global strategy. They don't know what to do if, for example, 5 wars start right now. Ukraine, I don't know, Estonia maybe, or Israel, or Taiwan, or wherever else it fires, or Poland and Finland, or Balkans, right? Their strategy doesn't allow them to prioritize things. They do not have it. They did not come to this war, neither mentally nor physically. And they don't have infantry that can fight really mid-grinder battles in the trenches. And let's look at the axis of evil. They have strategy. It's anti-colonial rhetoric. They are uniting. The speed of BRICS countries joining that organization is phenomenal. Usually it takes 10 to 20 years. Now they're basically reigniting that organization in just a few short months or within a year. Second, they have a lot of resources jointly. Third, they have huge numbers of infantry that are ready to fight in very grinding battles. And the only serious minus they have is technological deficiency. But it's rather easy to catch up on this because the wars of that scale, they ask not for high-tech weapons, but for cheap weapons that are easy to produce. And another advantage they have is they're ready to sacrifice more than the West can, or at least ready right now. So at the beginning of this conflict, the advantage, in my opinion, is with the axis of evil. How much the West can wake up and rebuild itself, that's a big question. But the fact that Global South is entering the new world war is entering that in a better condition, while the West is still confused about the degree that they need to re-amp their industrial complex. The West might lose. And they also we haven't touched here about the change of anthropotype, that the West also needs to find a way somehow to have the right human resources to fight it. In the meantime, we as Ukrainians are between these two huge forces, and we are holding one with all our blood and people, and the West thinks that they can spare us for solving their own internal political squabbles, and they're using us as a change penny while they're fighting their own positional fights in the Congress and figuring out their politics. We talked about that before, that we are in this situation because we forgot about our decency. We'll talk about that in some other stream again. But my verdict is clear. We are in a very difficult situation. Does it mean that everything is lost? No. Our enemy is not in a condition to quickly defeat us, even in such lack of support from the West and so much wiggling on the western side, trying to wiggle out of this conflict. If they could destroy us quickly, they would have done it, but no, they can't, right? So God didn't give them all the resources. That's why this war will be protracted, long, bloody. Everybody will be suffering casualties, and the speed of this warfare depends only on the wits of people who need to finally catch up. For now, they're failing that exam. guys, elect politicians who can think. And that's a message to both, to Ukrainians and to the West. The only winning strategy is to elect politicians who can think. To do that, you need to be able to think yourself. And in order for you to be more capable in that department, me and Nikolay are doing these streams. Okay, so about the global South and China in particular, there is a news that in China they promised to support Russian Federation in Ukrainian question. And China is saying that they will be supporting Ukraine. They will be supporting Russia in this war. Their new defense minister said that in his conversation with Sergei Shoigu, the Russian defense minister. So it appears that for a long time, China was taking a very neutral position, acknowledging territorial integrity of Ukraine and was softly supporting peaceful initiatives. But today, apparently, the Minister of Defense of China openly, I guess, unveiled his face. How do you estimate that? Here you should look at the context. The previous Minister of Defense was removed from his position for pro-Western position. He was accused of espionage for the West, and he made references in his statements. They were very pro-Western, generally speaking. So now the pendulum is swinging in a different direction. And the same principle that in order to straighten it, you need to bend it deeper in a different direction. Don't know what Chinese leadership told him, but it's a concerning signal. Another concerning signal is that, of course, no Korean shells would have reached Russian Federation without Chinese support. And that tells us the Chinese leadership made this decision a long time ago. And if we look at the growth of BRICS organization that are breaking now the West in general in terms of their political position, they're causing concerns, and I would say this rhetoric is only a cover for Chinese politics, and I would post a hypothesis here that China is already conducting a preparatory phase of this Third World War without involving itself directly, but doing it through proxy mechanisms. And once again, this axis of evil, so-called, is more organized than the axis of good. It's, not a shiny story. The initial position of this war is definitely more advantageous for the global South. Can the West flip it? We're yet to see. And we are in between, again, these two forces, when one is semi-treasonous to us, and the others want to break us and to make us part of their own. And from us in this situation, we need a better quality of gameplay, but because of certain aesthetic deficiencies, quoting our well-known movie, we're not really doing it well. I hope we can learn and do it better because we have nothing else to hope on. Maybe God's miracle, right? But you can hope for that, but you should not build your strategy around it. All right, one more news I want you to comment on. Armenia cannot rely on Russia as a military partner because Kremlin failed it so many times. Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan stated that. Reuters is quoting him. There are different signals coming from Southern Caucasus. In particular, they're saying that there is no Armenia, there is Western Azerbaijan. Some publications write. How do you see that situation? Do you think it can explode in some capacity? Can the expansion of Azerbaijan continue? Nikolay, let's look at the wider context on this. I think it's more interesting that we talked about the global South versus global West. Very few, not exactly bright people who do not understand the context. They're laughing at Russia that is retreating from Caucasus, at Russia that has lost a third of its Black Sea fleet, or half of it, and it turned out to be ineffective, that small underwater UAVs or underwater drones will finish it off. I have a question. When was the Black Sea fleet effective? Except for when Oleg sent 2,000 vessels towards Constantinople. Black Sea is a trap for any fleet. In the conditions of missiles and aviation, any fleet in that sea is trapped. So Russia inherited that from Soviet Union, and they were building up on this, but it turned out to be a cul-de-sac of their naval development. Is it a defeat? Not really. They figured that, okay, this strategy is not suitable for that sea, and they likely will review the concept of their Black Sea fleet. So then again, Russia left South Caucasus. Does it mean the defeat of Russian politics in general in there? No, it's a change of concept in practice. They left Southern Caucasus, but they acquired Iran as a good ally. And trust me, that is a much more precious acquisition than Armenia. So before giddily giggling about that, I would advise to look in the context. Russia is not losing too much in this war. In my estimations, they actually acquired quite a bit. And that's the quality of their politics at the moment. And that treacherous trap of protracted warfare. If the war stopped on the 2nd of April, Russia would be defeated. And we would be able to jump out of the traps of Minsk I and Minsk II agreements. But when it went on the protracted scenario, and we're not going to elaborate why, we only have ideas, we don't have confirmations. But now they're turning on their super weapon, long will, which they learned from Mongols. And despite all the catastrophes and defeats, how many generals they've lost already, they continue hitting at the same spot. And they're continuing their same politics. And when people at first laugh at them, then a few months and then a couple years later, they look at them with more respect because, look, yeah, they may be dumb, they may be not too bright, but they are continuing and very persistent. And they're eating through, they're being punished for their mistakes in the 90s, but they're definitely delivering what they wanted to get and to deliver. And we probably can work with them. And if you add scientific potential, the nuclear umbrella they still have, and motivated population, then, well, we can probably work with them, given that our general goals align. That's what African and other Asian countries may think. And I want to highlight another trap that our minds are falling in here in Ukraine. People are saying that Russia is losing people at a huge pace, right? 300,000 lost is a big number. Well, friends, if you calculate the total number of people they acquired with the acquired territories and ex-territories, it's at least 3.5 million people living there. So they've lost 350,000 and they acquired 3.5 million. Is it profitable? The margin is 10 times, right? Even if you can only count the men that they conscribe, it would be maybe half, right, of population. Still, it's 5 times more than they have lost. It's mathematics in their favor. And now let's hypothetically imagine, so you don't faint. Frankly, I don't care if you faint, but I'm addressing those who criticize us here. And imagine they conquered the whole Ukraine and they lost 8 million dead, right? They lost 8 million soldiers. We've been very effective. We killed 8 million. But they got the whole Ukraine. They acquired 36 million or even 26 million. 8 against 26. And they would still acquire territory, industrial potential, a lot of arable lands, economy, etc. Is it profitable for them or not? My friends, before you count the dead and jump on the bodies and call them orcs, which is not exactly good from the Christian point of view, just turn on the cynical math. And before you're happy about Russia losing South Caucasus, just check yourself. Do they need it really much when they found agreement with Iran? Even some of the Russian esoterics writers, like Daniil Andreev, who wrote The Rose of the World, he was highlighting the main problem of Russia was lack of proper relations with Iran, and now they are building them. Relations with China is changing, Global South, African countries, Latin America, many other things of interest happening in the world, and the West is still failing to show up to this war. A very interesting story, yeah. On the West, they're still sitting and discussing whether they should be aiding Ukraine while there are waves of immigrants going through the southern border into the United States. Perhaps we won't be helping Ukraine, as Trump said today, until the proper law is implemented in regards to the southern border. While our soldiers are holding Avdiivka with the skin of their teeth, and Trump and other politicians are thinking, why help? At first, we need to deal locally with a couple dozen $1 billion that maybe were laundered or repurposed. And I understand him. He's fighting for his vision of America. But then gather your shit together and come to some understanding. Where does Ukraine sit in that future of America? Because on one hand, you're saying that Russia is weakening globally, but you're ignoring our losses. And yeah, you're trying to get on a throne at the expense of somebody else, as usual. Yeah, and Forbes published that pro-Russian Republicans in American Congress refused to vote for presidential suggestion. And basically concluding the article, do not put your hopes on Americans this year. Right, so basically Ukraine finds some other ways to get your shells. Right. Look at the change of the vocabulary. If they're starting to use the word the West is treasonous to Ukraine, when I was saying a couple months ago that our things are really bad, and I painted our road forward to be very difficult, right? There was so much scandal about me then. Even Ukraine intel services visited my home and, started trying to hack my phones with my administrators and all. And now, look, Forbes is publishing that. Right, 4 months roughly about we started talking about it. But yeah, the important thing to follow here, to track here, is the change of vocabulary. If they're starting to use the word treason, I have not used this word. I'm trying to be more objective. I'm trying to show that Americans are in a difficult position. But their problem is not that they're in a difficult position. Their problem is that they're not making conclusions from their difficult position. They're not making them fast, or they're not making them fully. And then our position is getting even more complicated. Right. To be fair here, Alexei, one should say that the original article by Forbes that we picked does not have this word treason, and it was only used as Ukrainian translation. Okay, our show doesn't allow us to, its format doesn't allow us to do deep analysis of the English language here, because most of our viewers are Ukrainian or Russian speaking, and they don't know the detailed meanings of political terms used by the West. And frankly, even we, although we are better than others very often, even we discover new layers there. All right, so if they're not using the word treasonous on the West, then it makes me even more right, because I did not use that word. I was saying that the main problem is that they're slow. What the real choice we're facing. And that's why we're working here. I'm working here in the West, and not only me, and our stream as well, so that people learn to think better. Our goal is still common good, and we are analyzing and giving prompts in relation to better the common good. I'm not taking any political side. I'm not making my political career here. I'm only working for the good of our country. And the case of our 1st Tank Brigade is a good example of that, when I'm being personally attacked, but I still support them. It's very easy to understand us. As long as you think that we are Russian spies or we're political figures, you don't understand us. You're losing precious information. The moment the viewer gives a possibility that me and Nikolay are here for the common good, you might start seeing a lot of interesting things. You might start understanding a lot of things. Try it. It's interesting. Just afford yourself for 15 minutes. Do not think that we're spies. Just afford it as an experiment, as a thought experiment. And look at what we're saying from the point of common good. And you'll probably discover a few interesting things. Thank you for that stream, Alexei Nikolaevich. And I think it was very good content for this week. Thank you everybody who viewed us. Do not forget to support Armed Forces of Ukraine. The link will be under that video to support 93rd Specialized Mechanized Brigade. There's very little left to finish this fundraiser, and there'll be the next one for the UAVs for them. And once again, to remind you that we're not touching these monies, they go directly to the accounts of these military units. Do not forget to click like and subscribe to Alexei Arestovych, to Alpha Media, and see you in the next stream.